Barry, is Bitcoin like the tulip mania?
You know, I like to think of Bitcoin as if it's a specific company. It's a Microsoft or an Amazon, and it has a narrative behind it. It has its fans, it has its detractors, and that's how Bitcoin became worth $1 trillion and then gave a lot of that back away. And
Right.
now it's back up in that neighborhood. So are there mini bubbles? Are there mini pockets of excessive speculation in this market? Yes, but that's what happens when there's a ton of capital sloshing around. And, everybody keeps saying this is 99, 2000. I kind of feel like we're more 96, 97, 98. We're not in the ninth inning, but there's a lot of late cycle speculative excess out there.
Barry, when I look at Bitcoin and what I hear from the detractors is there's going to be a point where the adults show up. And maybe Mr. Diamond alluded to that. The idea that it will be a taxation authority or an SEC type authority in a major country. Do you just presume that's going to happen?
I presume that's a possibility, maybe even a probability. The whole concept that Bitcoin is decentralized finance with no government controls and no taxing authority intervention, that's a key driver of this. That's why this has been so effective for rogue regimes like North Korea and ransomware. At a certain point, those problems become so large that the odds of the U.S. government or the EU or some other central authority stepping in and saying, no mas, we've had enough of this nonsense.
Yeah.
That's going to really put a cap on how far Bitcoin can go.
Barry, there's the Bitcoin debate and the value of it. Jamie Dimon was weighing in on that. But probably more importantly, he was weighing in on the importance of banks actually catering to clients who want to trade Bitcoin. And it raises the bigger issue of where banks are going to get growth. We also heard about Deutsche Bank possibly considering expanding into trading base metals again 8 years after exiting that business. Do you think that banks at this place are a good buy, have that potential growth area, or is the sign that they're going into Bitcoin trading and going into base metals trading a sign that they kind of are limited in the number of areas they can go to truly grow?
There's been this issue with banks since the financial crisis and the implementation of Dodd-Frank and the Volcker rules. And are banks fast-growing finance companies that are entitled to a high multiple, or are they stodgy utilities that get a low growth but steady dividend sort of multiple? I don't know the answer to that, but if you can answer that question, it'll answer your question. I think the world has started to recognize that lower cost of capital, lower infrastructure costs, and high scalability is where the big money is going to be. And that really defines technology and software. And so there's been a lot of focus in that space. Banks kind of feel like they've been left behind by the growth investors. And as you know, value has not done well the past decade.
Well, and that's the issue, is how are they going to convince that perhaps they have some potential other than just depending on the yield curve? And I say this as we deal with JP Morgan's kickoff tomorrow of the earnings season. How important is it to you to see the growth in lending, to see the growth in some of these areas that have been lagging behind due to the cash infusions into the economy?
So this is going to be an interesting quarter for earnings across the board. It's going to be an asterisk quarter because there's no doubt that increasing expectations for earnings has been a key driver throughout 2021. Look at the consensus analyst estimates all year. They've crept up as the year has progressed. The analysts have been underestimating earnings and have been behind the curve. The issue that we're going to run into is how much of earnings are going to be somewhat compromised because we have supply chain issues, we have manufacturing issues. The banks have had a standard excuse. What do you expect from us when the yield curve is this flat and when rates are at zero? They're rooting for the Fed to start tapering, get off QE, begin to normalize rates. Banks do better when rates are generally higher, so they have a little bit of room. I don't mean 4, 5, 6%.
Yeah.
2, 2.5, 2 3/4 would be a windfall for JP Morgan, would be fantastic for Bank of America. until we get there, they're really having a hard time putting together a positive string of earnings. That said, I would never want to bet against Jamie Dimon. He is the premier bank executive in America of this generation. And if anyone can figure out how to squeeze some growth without getting into the sort of Wells Fargo problems that we've seen, it's him.